concerning about the problem of slow progress in vetting and approving funding applications for infrastructure projects. Members who wish to speak in this motion debate will please press the request to speak button. And I'll call upon Mr. Abraham Shek to speak and move the motion.
Move the motion as printed in the agenda. Mr. Acting President, the Occupy movement has evaporated from our streets into the thin air. But unfortunately, the standoff between the pan-democrats and the government continues in this council, resulting in the lackluster pace in vetting and approving the funding applications for infrastructural projects, which has already created an unwarranted situation that could bring about a medium to long-term detrimental effect to the socio-economic development of Hong Kong. This concern is the essence of my motion debate. Mr. Acting President, I shall start this motion debate with a question. Have we, in the past 18 months, as legislators of this esteemed council, discharged our duties diligently as required under the Article 73 Blacketry of the Basic Law, which requires our vetting and approving of government expenditure? Judging from the records of our performance in approving funding proposals of capital projects, we have failed desperately. In 2013 to 2014 legislative session, we approved capital works projects to the tune of a meager $3.6 billion, comparing to 2012-2013 session of over $90 billion, and 2011 to 2012 session of over $160 billion. This represents a drop of over 90%, and is really a shameful act of this council. Such a significant drop is significantly due to the filibustering and the recent non-cooperative movement launched by some of the pan-democrats. They manipulated established procedures and delayed the progress of meeting by submitting a multitude of amendments, raising repetitive and superfluous questions, and moving motions to adjourn discussions on agenda items, resulting in the sabotaging of quite a number of funding applications for economic and social development projects, many of which were postponed, shelved, or even withdrawn. Over the past few years, filibustering took place during debates on government budgets and motions related to constitutional development, and rarely on social, economic, and livelihood issues. But with the recent 831 MPC SC decision on the election of chief executive for 2017, the non-establishment groups have extended the battle lines to every aspect of the work of this council, with intent to confront and immobilize the SAR government and its policy. Many scheduled funding applications on infrastructure projects are entrapped in unnecessary debates and delay for the sake of political combat and confrontation. This development is really a political tsunami. Not long ago, it was the pride of this council that we have adopted a rational, pragmatic manner in handling council issues for service to the community. Majority of our members were rational with handling socio-economic matters, while heated debates and conflicts over constitutional development have continued over the last 17 years, often harsh and bitter. But for social and economic issues, we were able to agree to disagree and resolve conflicts at the discussion tables by examining and considering government proposals in a fair, cooperative, and constructive manner. In response to the many previous accusations against the Democrats of being anti-government and stirring up unnecessary trouble in this council, the Democrats used to argue, and rightly so, that apart from constitutional issues, they don't oppose for the sake of opposition, as proven and evident by the support and cooperation given to the SAR government on social, economic, and livelihood-related projects, and on government legislatures. Now the current non-cooperative movement of the Pan-Democrats is a drastic change of tactic from cooperation to confrontation, even extending to non-political and socio-economic policies. They have adopted an overly aggressive attitude to fight in every issue, particularly the capital works projects, for the sake of obtaining the so-called genuine universal suffrage. If no changes are made, the SAR government, the Hong Kong economy, as well as the livelihood of people will all suffer from significant adverse consequences. Mr. Acting President, as we all know, infrastructure projects affects all walks of life, both economically and socially. Both our competitiveness and our long-term development depends on these capital works projects. Thus, no matter how big our conflict over constitutional development, or how unhappy some of us may be with the SAR government and the leadership of the present Chief Executive, I firmly believe that we shouldn't regard the relevant funding applications as bargaining chips and use them to put pressure on the SAR government. After all, constitutional development is only one part of the overall development of Hong Kong. Fighting for democracy and genuine universal suffrage shouldn't be bundled up with issues that affect our economy and local livelihoods. Otherwise, the overall interests of Hong Kong will damage irrevocably. Mr. Acting President, we all know our competitiveness is of vital importance to Hong Kong's survival. A scarcity of land and natural resources pushes us to leverage our advantages in the rule of law, institutional structure, efficiency, infrastructure, and geographical locations. Over the years, thanks to our outstanding infrastructural network, Hong Kong has continued to gain top positions in global competitiveness rankings. However, with severe global competition, we must continue to sharpen our competitive edge. It is now our choice as elected representative of the people to grow or to rot, and the buck stops here in this council. We are here to approve or disapprove funding proposals of capital works projects for the growth of Hong Kong. In fact, Mr. Acting President, years of heavy investment in infrastructure have not only equipped us with abundance of space for further development, it has also provided us with an effective and efficient transport network for social, cultural, and commercial activities. Most importantly, our connection with the neighboring areas have been enhanced, facilitating further integration, strengthening our position as an international city, and laying a solid foundation for our sustainable development, and as a leading city of Asia. Furthermore, investment in infrastructure projects holds a special position in improving local livelihood. Regrettably, the outstanding applications in the year 2013 to 2014 cover projects such as construction of schools, public hospitals, public housing, social work, and the list goes on and on. The delay in approving these projects, which we have only approved $3.6 billion project, has actually precipitated many problems for the future development of Hong Kong, affecting the livelihood of the people. Given that our infrastructure projects have been delayed, the development of new areas has also been affected. We have already wasted precious time over the last 18 months. It's now time to catch up or we will lose out. On the other hand, Mr. Acting President, the construction industry have expressed deep concern over the delay of funding for infrastructural projects. There are currently 360 construction workers in Hong Kong, which constitute about 10% of local employees, supporting the livelihood of over 1 million people. Following the previous downturns in the construction industries, many construction workers became then unemployed, making them extremely sensitive to decreases in funding of infrastructural projects. They worry that the continued delay in funding will cast a shadow over the development of construction industry and create a domino effect in which the industry enterprises will cut their investments in response to the lack of cash flow caused by the drop in government funding. At the same time, the problem of aging and the lack of new blood are also hampering the construction industry at the moment, resulting in the present shortage of skilled labor, as we have discussed this morning. Young workers not only worry about demanding better working environment, but are also concerned about the prospects of the industry. Not only do they want to see a fair return for their hard work, but also they have a good prospects should they decide to join the construction industry. If funding continues to be disrupted, projects will not commence as scheduled in the next 7 to 10 years, creating a vacuum of uncertainty that will lead to further decrease in the number of new workers coming into the industry. Past experience have actually shown that in such cases, the number of new construction workers will drop, and this is the present situation in Hong Kong. Mr. President, the past and the present delay will also mean that the construction cost of outstanding projects will also increase even further, unnecessarily wasting even more public money to complete these projects. The SAR government is the applicant for these funds, and its liaison, particularly with the Pan Democrats, is apparently ineffective. Thus, in today's motion, I propose that the administration should face up with these problems and proactively work with this Council to seek solutions for the sake of Hong Kong as a whole. We should focus on the overall and long-term interests of Hong Kong, instead of the potential gains or losses of some individuals or political party. I started off with a question, and I'd like to conclude with a challenge to members of this Council, that we should diligently discharge our duties as under 73.3 to approve government projects to the tune that we have actually approved in 2011 to 2012, that to 160 billion, or whatever the government gives to us. Thank you, Mr. President.
I now propose the question to you, and that is that the motion moved by Hon Abraham Shek be passed. 2 members will move amendments to this motion. The Council will now proceed to a joint debate on the motion and the 2 amendments. I call upon members who move the amendments to speak in the following order: Mr. Leung-sing, Mr. Alan Leung, but they may not move amendments at this stage. Mr. Leung-sing. Mr. Deputy, thank you. I'm grateful to Mr. Abraham Shek for moving this motion, which is very important to livelihood, and there is a need for us to debate on this, although it comes a little bit too late. If filibustering occurs here in this Council, not only with this delay the deliberation of the proposal, it will delay the business of the entire Council. Infrastructure in the 1930s, 40s, President Roosevelt had the New Deal, which invested a lot of money in the infrastructure. In 1933 and 35, $3.3 billion was devoted to 30,000 infrastructural projects, and the U.S. was lifted out of the Depression. And these infrastructural developments will also facilitate the business environment and would improve the competitiveness, and in turn bring about improvement to livelihood. And these are not white elephants. According to the World Economic Forum, the World Economic report, Hong Kong's competitiveness ranks 7th, and infrastructure 6.69, we rank first. Singapore 6.45, ranking 2nd. According to the report, Hong Kong is leading in the way of infrastructural development. In terms of transport infrastructure, Hong Kong is standing out. So infrastructure is one of the important components in the competitive equation. Our competitors have been invested in infrastructure and logistics. The share of investment has been increasing over the years. Guangzhou, for instance, is spending $820 billion in infrastructure development. They have the intercity railway, and they have the hub, which takes up 70% of the infrastructural development. The underground it has been extended to Foshan, and the airport is constructing the 3rd runway. Conversely, in Hong Kong, the connectivity has not been beefed up. We haven't quite decided on the 3rd runway. We are stalling on the infrastructural developments in Hong Kong. This is really a source of concern. I think the cause is actually the non-cooperative movement of the Pan-Democrats. I support Mr. Shek's original motion, and I move the amendment to highlight the fact that the non-cooperative movement has already started. 2013, it didn't start in 2013 and 14. It actually started in 12 and 13. And there was a long period of filibustering regarding the OALA. The government is trying to paralyze the governance of Hong Kong. They are not having the interests of the public uppermost in their mind. In the last financial year, the government meant to introduce 39 projects to the tune of $43 billion to the council. After a whole series of filibustering, we managed to approve 13 involving $3.6 billion. The delay in infrastructural development has an effect on the practitioners and the workers. It also has some bearing on the day-to-day living. Now, the delay in public transport development is causing congestion on the public transport, and people have been waiting for a long time for improvement, and they're not seeing any achievement there. The other thing is this is also stifling the long-term economic development of Hong Kong, and our competitiveness will slip in the league table, and there will be losses to the industries, and Hong Kong will be relegated to a second-class city. Fourth, those who started it should be responsible for resolving it. We have to restore the proper order. It's not something the government can do single-handedly. The government, the members of the public, the LegCo, do have the obligation to get something done. So in my amendment, I am proposing that instead of saying the Legislative Council, we have to include all the stakeholders and the relevant people. The opposition parties should not do anything contrary to public interests. In this commercial city, I don't think we should look at everything from political angle. We have to be concerned about the livelihood. We have to be pragmatic in our deliberation of policies. Last year, on November 5th, at the LegCo meeting, we had 9 hours of meeting. Members moved try to have a quorum call on so many occasions, and we wasted 3 hours on this, and this is quite unusual the world over. So I heard that this is not the last we've heard of this uncooperative campaign. well, definitely this is not good show in the offing. These uncooperative movement will happen in Finance Committee and also the two committees under the Finance Committee, and there will be filibustering on the establishment of the ITB. People all over Hong Kong should be disapproving of this. They have to monitor the performance of the government, and they have to speak up against these kind of unreasonable acts. For those individual members who are being unreasonable, we have to speak up against them because they are undermining the infrastructural development. We have to stop this happening. Recently, there are some organizations who are speaking disapprovingly of the filibustering and non-cooperative action. There are some organizations taking to the street in protest. We understand this will be smashing the rice bowls of the people of Hong Kong, and they are on a collision course with the general public. We have to right the wrong stand, so I urge members to have regard to the financial situation and economic situation and bring the whole council back to normal so that the business sector, construction sector, and the professional sectors will stand to benefit. President, with these words, I conclude my speech.
Mr. Alan Leung, thank you, President. President, I have had a chance to talk to a coalition of 15 organizations in the construction industry. I met them outside this council. You might be surprised by what happened. After that, the representative of the 15 organizations and I reached a consensus, and that we should not try to blame the PWSC, the party who can really change the order on the agenda is Mr. Chi-wai Leung. The one who has played with politics is Chi-wai Leung. After an hour and a half of meeting, they told me that they would try to take the case to Chi-wai Leung. But you know that the CE is stubborn. In a recent meeting, 4 livelihood-related items were withdrawn, 2 on IT platform projects for schools, and the other one is on buying 10-odd police launchers. Another one is for the purchase of equipment for the FSD, Fire Services Department. And you may ask why. Chi-wai Leung is trying to adopt the mainland style of building some unnecessary structure so as to give political rewards to his cronies. There is no precedent on withdrawing 4 livelihood-related items from the FC. And Mr. Chi-wai Leung resorted to sophistry. He said that the 4 items could be handled in the budget. If the 4 items were submitted for consideration in the FC, once the approval was given, the money will be there to buy the police launchers and for the setting up of the IT platform for the schools. Let's suppose that this is not against the constitutional system. And let's say that it can be handled in the 2015-2016 budget. There will be at least 5 to 6 months of delay in relation to the purchasing of the police launches and the establishment of the IT platform for the schools. So who is playing with politics? Who is sacrificing livelihood-related items for the sake of a political struggle? The answer is so clear. It's Chi-wai Leung. This is really strange. As chairman of the PWSC, I tried to reshuffle the order of the items, and the Pan-Democrats also asked Mr. Tommy Cheung, the chairman of FC, to do the same, to change the order on the agenda. And I myself and other members received a letter from Professor Casey Chang, the secretary, and I quote from the letter. When the administration gave its notice to the FC, the order of the proposal reflects the government's position on the priority of the items concerned, unless there's something special. For example, urgent emergency relief is required, or we want to avoid tenders becoming ineffective. Normally speaking, the order of the item will not be changed. So Mr. Chi-wai Leung has learned from the mainland practice. Is the establishment of this supervious bureau for the purpose? Is it for the purpose of emergency relief, or is just for transferring benefits? Is this about tenders becoming invalid? Well, the IT Bureau doesn't have any tender to consider. So that shows that Mr. Chi-wai Leung would not allow us to be concerned about livelihood items and to advance the orders of such items. They won't let us do it. But if he wants to establish another unnecessary tier politically, he can do it. In the letter sent to the chairman of FC and the PWSC, the reasons are not reasons actually, they were excuses. If not, then why has it changed the agenda items? Well, Pan-Democrats are in favor of improving IT, the IT sector in Hong Kong. But the tactic he has adopted is a waste of money. They are asking for an additional funding of $22 million for duties that are already being done by other people. This is a very small bureau. It has very limited terms of reference. For communications, it will still come under the bureau of Mr. Greg So. And it's already halfway through Chi-wai Leung's term. The post could not be established at the beginning. And now, halfway through, he wanted to create a post. So is it not for the purpose of political struggle? Is it not done out of grudges? But as a result, he has sacrificed the IT platform for schools and the acquisition of 18 police launches. If something untoward happened on the sea and because of the lack of sufficient police launches, should we not blame Chi-wai Leung? So we should not be getting only half the picture. Two pro-establishment members have spoken, saying that we are in a non-cooperative exercise and we are dragging the Hong Kong down with it. Even the construction industry coalition is not convinced by this argument. Chi-wai Leung can change the order of the items. and he wants to involve this council in a political struggle. And now he's trying to blame the FC and the PWSC. How ridiculous. The two members have referred to the non-cooperative campaign many times. But this just shows the hypocrisy of Chi-wai Leung. If there was no such non-cooperative campaign, we wouldn't have received this letter putting up all these excuses, and then later he would just withdraw the items. So I would say this is, rather than calling this a non-cooperative campaign, this is a hypocrisy campaign on the part of Chi-wai Leung, and he has sacrificed people's livelihood for the sake of a political struggle. I think that's more accurate as a description of what has happened. Lastly, I want to remind the people of Hong Kong, this council is here to act as the goalkeeper for the public. Recently, we have learned at the PAC that the director of civil aviation built a shower room and a dancing room for the department. So we are here to monitor the situation. This morning at the ESC, we successfully secured another ticket by the from the Commissioner on Narcotics that there will be no mandatory drug testing. So through interaction between this council and the executive, we can uphold the interests and safeguard the interests of the public. This is a good example.
Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Mr. President, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Abraham Shek for moving the motion and Mr. Leung-sing and Mr. Alan Leung for moving their amendments. Before I speak, I'd like to first of all thank the Legislative Secretariat and members for their assistance. Within this legislative session, we've got a lot of additional PWSC and ESC meetings as well as FC meetings. About $30 billion worth of capital works projects had been endorsed, and we got endorsement for 7 infrastructure projects involving $4.5 billion. All along, capital works projects are conducive to Hong Kong's development as well as people's livelihood. In recent years, our capital works expenditure has been standing at $70 billion, covering a lot of projects: roads, railways, hospitals, schools, environmental protection, waste disposal plants, land supply, water supply, and drainage systems, etc. According to the World Economic Forum on Global Competitiveness, of the 140 economic entities, Hong Kong ranked first for a consecutive 5 years. That is encouraging. We have to continuously improve the living environment and living quality of members of the public. Therefore, the government must spend sufficient resources to launch infrastructure projects. In 2013-14, 39 new projects were endorsed, involving $90 billion. Approved projects include the Hong Kong Children's Hospital, Cheung-kong Hospital, Kai-Tak Development Area, infrastructure works, cycle tracks in the new territories, widening of Tolo Harbour and Fan Ling Highway, and so forth. All public works departments are working hard to carry out these projects to serve the public. However, in 2013-14, the FC only endorsed 30 new projects involving $3.6 billion only. For new projects endorsed by the FC last year, it only amounted to less than 5% in number than 2012-13. Filibuster had seriously hampered the progress of our works projects. In the last year, 27 projects were affected by LegCo's filibustering and has suffered delay and slippage, including the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator, reclamation, stadium, schools, and noise barriers, and so forth. For those delayed for half a year, they amounted to an additional cost of $2.5 billion. And for the landfills and incinerator, the additional cost was $1.3 billion. And in certain cases, we had to re-tender the projects, like the renovation for the Buddhist hospital. And then on Tuen Mun Road, additional noise barriers had been tendered, which would expire by the end of this year. We may have to re-tender the project. As for individual tendered projects, even though tenderers had agreed for an extension and re-tendering was not necessary, that doesn't mean that there's no impact on the works. So long as we don't have the funding, we cannot start. So that will have an adverse impact on progress and costs. Some people suggest that the government should be held responsible. If the administration agreed to postpone the less controversial projects, then the LegCo would not have filibustering. However, for our long-term competitiveness and our 7 million people can live peacefully and happily, we must have a diversified range of infrastructure projects. We cannot just build schools, hospitals, and the like, which are less controversial, and those land-related projects would be postponed unlimitedly. We must not neglect the long-term development of Hong Kong. Otherwise, we're just like an ostrich, burying our head in the sand. And we must give regard to councillors' views, so we have to conduct broad consultation and to satisfy the planning and statutory procedures such that all views would be considered. In actual fact, the government, before tabling papers with the PWSC and the ESC, consulted district councils and relevant panels of the LegCo. Funding allocation proposals are debated, amended, and discussed before going to the FC and PWSC. There are also criticisms that the government must introduce livelihood-related projects to the LegCo for scrutiny. Well, what are livelihood-related projects? Medium and long-term projects had become targets of filibuster, but shortage of land supply has become an obstacle for long-term development. Housing, job creation, etc., are these not livelihood-related? Construction costs are on the rise. We envisage that for government projects, construction costs will rise by 6% within this year. In this legislative year, the 86 new projects for funding allocation amount to a total of $70 billion. Before the completion of this session, if we cannot obtain the funding, there will be a slippage and rise of construction costs. The AFC had a number of additional meetings. Still, only a very limited number of projects got endorsed. The way ahead is not optimistic. The works-related departments will continue to keep in communication with LegCo members and provide justifications in order to gain support from members. I would like members to grasp the opportunity to rationally scrutinize all the works projects proposals such that infrastructure projects and livelihood-related projects could proceed. I would like to stop here and take views from members first. Thank you.
Mr. Kwok-hing. President, a moment ago, Mr. Alan Leung made his speech, which did infuriate me. According to I mean, from what Mr. Leung said, I think he is confounding right with wrong, and he's standing logic on his head. Now, he was said that he was approached by the alliance not to engage in filibustering, and rather he said that the alliance is in support of what he said. I have received the WhatsApp message from the alliance and urged me to reprimand Mr. Alan Leung for misleading the members of the public. President, I'm really infuriated. I bring with me a clay pot to tell the members of the public that the engineering sector is going to have to face the specter of retrenchment after the Lunar New Year. President, this diagram shows that in 2012 to 13, the government got on with projects worth $90 billion. And they involve bridges, tunnels, hospitals, schools, and a lot of specific facilities like public hospitals and so on. However, in 2013-14, how much has been earmarked? The number, that the amount stood at $3.6 billion. I'd like the members of the public to have a good look and see whether the Pan Democrats are justified. You may choose to oppose Chi-wai Leung. That's your choice, but I don't think you should hold the whole of Hong Kong to ransom. You can vote against the proposal, but I don't think you should really do anything detrimental to the public. Now, $3.6 billion per year. Now, what is the consequence, Mr. President? In 2003, during the financial crisis, the administration at that time earmarked $30–40 billion in terms of infrastructural projects. We had 70,000 people in the construction sector who were out of a job, and that was in the year 2003. Now, the funding earmarked was $3.6 billion, and a fraction of what we used to earmark. I think it is clear, everything is clear to the members of the public. I'd like to put this to fellow members and fellow citizens. Why do we see a situation like that? Mr. Chen, well, since Mr. Wong would like to put this to the fellow citizens, fellow councillors, I'd like to call a quorum call. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, please continue. President, $3.6 billion for 13 projects. There are 70, 80 projects that are still remaining outstanding. For the entire construction trade, 250,000 workers, 70,000 engineers, 40,000 civilians, with $3.6 billion earmarked. There should be $90 billion that have not been earmarked for 70, 80 projects. There is a direct bearing on the advanced work, the consultancy work, the studies, the planning, the surveying, the investigation. All these professionals involved are adversely affected. On Sunday, Mr. President, the chairman of the Construction Industry Association chairman told me that the professionals of these various sectors are likely to be retrenched after the Lunar New Year. They're going to face a pay cut because of the outstanding projects. The construction trade, the 250,000 skilled workers are going to be affected as well. We retrain them for the new jobs, but they find themselves out of a job. That's the result of the delays. This is the result of the uncooperative movement of the pandemic question. They are doing this at the expense of the entire Hong Kong people. And this is the concrete evidence. President, other than the funding that has not been earmarked, the delays are making taxpayers waste their money. Starting from this year, Mr. Secretary Chen told us that because of the project delays, the project costs have risen by $2.3 billion. Just a couple of minutes ago, Mr. Chen, the Secretary, talked about the rise by $2.5 billion. Let's not talk about 2.5. Let's stick with $2.3 billion. Now, if we earmarked funding for an old folks home, they cost us $65 million. $2.3 billion would be enough to build 35 old folks homes, each with 100 places.
Now, the pandemocratic camp can have all the talk, but they do nothing but evil. $2.5 billion going to waste. Mr. President, on the one hand, it's a waste of our money. On the other hand, workers on part-time employment becomes unemployed. The pandemic criticized the chief executive as being returned by a small circle election. Now we have this universal suffrage proposal allowing one person, one vote, and yet you just keep on objecting to everything. You oppose everything. You are in the opposition camp, and you are against the people. Mr. President, I won't ask them to be lenient. I appeal to members a number of times already. I urge members to register. I ask members of the public to register as a voter before May, so that you can exercise your voting right, so that you can choose the right persons. You can vote for the right persons into district councils and LegCo. Or this will be the end of Hong Kong, Dr. Kwok-hing. Mr. President, well, if people are ignorant and if they listen to Hon Kwok-hing, they might believe in him. Of course, members in the Legislative Council must do their assignments and work towards the benefit of the society. Mr. Leung-sing is not here. Before, in the past, when he cut short the filibuster, we asked time and again for the agenda items to be shuffled, and he did not listen to us. This year, the same happens to the Finance Committee. We asked for items not controversial in nature, livelihood items such as the construction of schools, hospitals, etc. please pause here, Dr. Kwok-hing, Mr. Raymond Wong. Please do not. Mr. Raymond Wong, it is not your time to speak first, so please do not speak loudly or you'll be asked to leave the chamber. Dr. Kwok-hing, please continue. Mr. President, it's the members from the pro-establishment camp who are creating the chaos. We're talking about tens and hundreds of billions of dollars in those projects. First on Liantang BCP, well, some $58 billion according to the papers. Originally, the purpose of this project was to allow or increase the capacity of the BCP, but according to the Hong Kong 2030 report, according to the administration's papers, because of the remote location, and according to analysis, only 5.3% of traffic travels to the eastern part of Huizhou. Therefore, it was not a suitable location for BCP. And yet, after 2008, the government changed its position. Together with the Shenzhen municipal government, a report was published on this BCP. And in fact, it was the mainland government which demanded this BCP because of the traffic congestion in Lowu and air pollution. They would like to have another BCP so that we have traffic and people crossing borders on the east side and the west side, respectively. It's this project costs $58 billion. On the other hand, another project, the XRL project, as you can see, we're talking about a cost overrun amounting to $10 billion. This is the White Elephant project. How can they help Hong Kong people? We have IVS visitors crowding Hong Kong, and Secretary could make such mean remarks by suggesting that we wait for another train to come first. But we need to wait for a long time, and nowadays, even if you go to Yuen Long, Tuen Mun, Tin Shui Wai, these districts are affected by these mainland tourists. And yet we're spending tens of billions of dollars to attract more IVS tourists. All public works projects, all livelihood items discussed in this council will not be opposed by the pandemics outright. We even ask for the items to be advanced. And yet, at the Finance Committee, before voting on controversial items such as the incinerator and landfill extension proposal, we asked that livelihood-related items be advanced first. And yet the administration did not agree. And now we have an item on Innovation and Technology Bureau. And the administration then withdrew a number of items relating to schools and another proposal relating to the Fire Services Department. For the reason of Chi-wai Leung going against the people. Delay in these construction projects will not cause unemployment of workers, but the FTU should give this a careful thought, because when you have so many white elephant projects, the next suggestion is to import labor. Does the grassroots share the success? No, they get nothing. So with XRL projects, Liantang BCP, Artificial Island, Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge, all these projects have nothing to do with people's livelihood. Many of these projects are controversial. There is no consensus among the communities on these items. It is the responsibility of LegCo members, and particularly those from pan-democratic camp, to monitor the government, not to squander the money away. We ask for hospitals, schools to be built, RCHs to be provided, and the administration just rejected and delayed. So we have all the papers available. as evidence. So, and of course, I agree to one point made by Mr. Kwok-hing. There should be more members of the public registered as voters. After the umbrella movement, people are now aware of what the Chi-wai Leung administration has done. They should vote and drive away the pro-establishment camp members. And about this motion, Mr. Alan Leung, as chairman of the PWSC, bore the brunt because he did ask the administration to advance some of the items, and the administration just refused to discuss with him. And very often the administration goes against the people, and this government should be accountable to its people. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars worth of projects, some $380 billion committed, and in fact, we're relying on the capital reserve fund and proceeds from our land sale. That means we must sell more land to save more money for these projects, because for the artificial island, third runway system, all these projects demand more public money. So they're asking for more public money for white elephant projects.
Mr. Raymond Wong. Chairman, well, when it comes to slow progress in vetting and approving funding applications for infrastructure projects, it is actually a pseudo title. It gave the chance for Mr. Abraham Shek to said what he said, and it was also an opportunity for the people who are for it and the people who are against it a time to debate on it. Confucius says, well, if you have the right on your side, you don't need an order to proceed. Otherwise, an order won't cover you. It's very clear. The Hong Kong Communist government has never heard Hong Kong people's voice when it comes to formulation of policies. Because of errors in policy implementation, people are unhappy. However, they have never thought that is because they have done wrong. And legislators here will criticize them. And actually, for some of them, it's just the devil rebuking sin. Well, sometimes when you oppose to the ideas, you will be stigmatized that you are opposing for the sake of opposing. Say, Mr. Shek is here. In 2007, the Civil Aviation Department asked for $7 billion to revamp their system and to build a new complex to enhance Hong Kong's status as an aviation hub. It was swiftly passed by the Finance Committee to consolidate our position as the shipping and aviation hub. However, the CAD, the Civil Aviation Department, misled the government logistics department, and as a result, Hong Kong people suffer. This new CAD complex actually contained a 200 square feet multi-purpose room and restroom for the Director General. But we have to have a value for money audit to make sure that people won't abuse their position. This is a recent example. It is a perfect example. What are you talking about if you talk about infrastructure? And Mr. Kwok-hing was talking about tens of billions of dollars, how grand these projects are, how good they are for Hong Kong. Well, when it comes to long-term care, every year 5,000 people waited for a place to receive the service. They die before they receive one. So it's just heaps of rubbish here. You can't win in an argument with me because I have a lot of figures. I have an endless list of examples. When you want approval, of course, you would say a lot of good things. And when you've got the money, you just do everything that is bad. In 2010, that is the XRL, the Express Rail Link, and it's only 20 kilometers long, and it is more expensive than the one in Taiwan, and it's 3 times the cost of the English Channel Tunnel. And now it's found that there is a delay and there's a project overrun. It's a black hole. Who is going to foot the bill? KK Chan? Is taxpayers' money. Why don't you say that? Why didn't you mention it? There is a long list of poor records of the administration. Every time they started in a grand way and then it shrunk. So it's very loud thunder, but very little rain. Well, who caused the situation? Do you have public mandate? Chi-wai Leung has been in office for 2.5 years. People are unhappy. We are boiling with anger. Police officers are turned into thugs. Who did that? Those in power, not us. Not legislators who have very little power. You have to tell the public. No one will blame us. We have very little power. We represent the people, but we have little power. We despise those who are directly elected that are loyalists because they are defending those who are wrong. They are in cahoots with this poor government. Mark Twain said that when you're in a difficult situation, it's not because of ignorance. It's because of fallacy that dresses itself up as the right thing. And now the Hong Kong Communists and the Loyalists is a perfect example. There is another one. Ronald Reagan said something. He said that the government is not a solution to problems. The government itself is the problem. Well, today the Hong Kong SARG is the root of the problem. Poor Hong Kong people, we have no power to overturn this government. You have to listen to the Chinese Communist Party to oppress Hong Kong people. When someone talks about Hong Kong nationalism, they've been labeled as separatists. Well, it's a step short of throwing them into prison. Well, when we have democracy, we have the freedom to oppose to it. We have to negate because it is right. We oppose to it because it is the right thing to do. I won't oppose simply for the sake of it. You have to debate to know better. In a country, it's the duty of the opposition to oppose, because this is the way to show that the government has done wrong. This is the way to protect the people's rights. Don't you listen in class? I am very loud. So is Kwok-hing. But when you speak loudly, you have to have substance and content. Well, we have to make sure that the policy implementation and formulation and implementation are fair and open. It's our duty. We have to doubt when there is no doubt. Mr. Kenneth Leung.
To Mr. Abraham Shek for raising this motion debate concerning about the problem of slow progress in vetting and approving funding application for infrastructure projects. But I'm afraid, Mr. President, I cannot agree with Mr. Shek's motion because fundamentally, I think, on a theoretical basis, Mr. Shek's motion is flawed. First of all, in the fourth line of his motion, it says, infrastructure works will definitely be delayed, thereby pushing up works costs and affecting the livelihood of practitioners. Now, I just have one question for Mr. Shek. The pushing up the cost, is it because of the delay, or is it because of the excessive demand, because of the over-concentration of work carried out during the period which shot up the price of material or labor? If I'm just a first-year economics student, I would say because of the excessive demand on a limited supply, then naturally the cost of labor will shoot up, and not because of the delay. And my second big question, Mr. President, on this motion is, on the industry's sustainability and eventually hindering Hong Kong's long-term economic development, and also because of the speed of approving the funding application, Mr. Shek also talked about the livelihood of the industry as a whole. Now, this begs the question, what is the purpose of, launching this infrastructure project? Not to mention, we haven't defined the term infrastructure yet. What is infrastructure? But before we go down to the definition of infrastructure, I think per se, the building of roads, bridges, and other facilities is not to make the industry sustainable, because all these infrastructures are capital stocks of society, and these stocks must produce utility and not per se to provide employment, because we are not in an economic downturn. Of course, when you use the Keynesian theory, building of infrastructure will increase employment, will generate GDP, will have a multiply effect. I beg your pardon, but modern economists fail to agree on this point. This is fundamental, of course, but this is a theory coming from a 1930 general theory of Keynes. If we want to stimulate economic recovery, both fiscal policy and monetary policy need to be used. But in Hong Kong, in 2015, we are not in an economic depression. Now, let's go down to the more basics. What utility do we have if we are building more railways, more tunnels, more roads? Of course, yes. The only word we can find is connectivity. But what is the utility of connectivity without other types of economic activities? You couldn't convince me, because there is and there must be a saturation point of infrastructure in a place which is only 1,000 square meters. But ironically, Mr. President, when I speak to a very senior civil engineer a couple of days ago, I asked his expert opinion, Mr. Engineer, do you think there would be a saturation point for infrastructure? He said no, because, he said, when infrastructure became old, no matter they're still usable or not, we will tear them down and we'll build more, newer, bigger, more sophisticated infrastructure. Mr. President, I don't think this is the right attitude. The third question, what is infrastructure? Without even defining the word infrastructure, we are just debating for the past 2 hours. I think it's a bit ridiculous and superficial. Now, I recently read a paper prepared by the U.S. Congressional Research Service. The title of that paper read "The Role of Public Works Infrastructure in Economic Recovery." Now, what is infrastructure is that there's no standard or agreed definition of the term, and the concept in policy terms has been and remain fluid, and this may include the infrastructure which common people understand: roads, bridges, water, sewage system, airports, public building. This is a more narrow definition of infrastructure. And a wider definition of infrastructure, Mr. President, it also includes school, health facilities, recreation facilities, electric power production, waste disposal, and telecommunication facilities. But also recently, Mr. President, there's a relatively recent addition to the debate concerning the definition of infrastructure, and that concept is called green infrastructure. And what is green infrastructure? A green infrastructure is the concept of growing the economy and creating jobs with investment that will promote clean energy and environmental protection. Mr. President, even without the necessity of going into the detail of whether the filibustering will or has indeed delayed the infrastructure funding process, I would say I would be very skeptical if I were being faced with a daunting task of approving a multi-billion-dollar road or tunnel project, because of the reason I've stated. I'm of course supportive of the wider concept of infrastructure, including the green infrastructure project. And that is the reason why we have to exercise a diligent role in vetting all the projects. These projects must produce utils to the community, to the citizens. And in fact, nobody can answer me this question. Maybe, perhaps, the Secretary, Professor Chen, you can answer me. I want to find out the multiplier index, the fiscal multiplier index for infrastructure projects in Hong Kong, but I could not find this index. And I would dare to say that the multiplier effect of cutting tax or dishing out cash to all the citizens of Hong Kong will have the same multiplier effect as the increase in government fiscal spending. Mr. President, I rest my case. Thank you.
Mr. Wai-kwok. Mr. President, first of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Abraham Shek for moving the original motion so the members can look into this issue, which is closely related to Hong Kong's economic development and people's livelihood. Some of the members worked on filibustering, and they have seriously undermined the approval of new projects. According to the Finance Committee, in 2014-15, it was estimated that total funding would be $443 billion, but the actual amount approved was only $3.6 billion. In comparison with 2011-12 and 2012-13, $106 billion and 99 billion, there has been a substantial drop in comparison with SARS, which SARS period when 20 billion were approved. The amount approved last year was too small. Now there was a joint alliance of the construction industry urging district electrical members to stop filibustering. I and Mr. Shek are members of the alliance. Delay in funding approval would escalate costs and waste public money. It will undermine the livelihood of the workers. There are major infrastructural projects and building projects in Hong Kong. There is a strong demand for construction workers. There is a shortage of manpower supply. The Construction Contractors Association conducted a visit on the site. It is found that there were a shortage of 3,000 odd and 1,500 odd workers. It is projected that there is a shortage of 150,000 construction workers and 4,600 E&M workers. Because of political arguments, the planning of infrastructure has been delayed. Now there is a severe shortage of manpower because of large demand. But if the next batch of projects are not launched, then 360,000 construction workers will not have enough work to do. So sometimes there is a glut, sometimes there is starvation. It's estimated that the expenditure would be about $70 billion together with the private sector. The total is about $180 billion, and that amount can support the construction industry. If the unemployment rate rises to 19% in the construction industry, then there will be more than 70,000 people unemployed. About half of the construction workers above the age of 50. Training apprentice training skilled workers will take about 5 to 6 years. If the number of projects decline substantially, many workers have to change jobs because of uncertainty in career. There will be fewer people joining the construction industry. Training efforts will go down the drain. There are engineers, surveyors, works inspectors who are professionals. The experienced professionals will also switch out of their jobs because of the decline in number of projects, and there will be a vacuum in experience. There are constraints on residential staff. If one has not get a job, has not got a job for a year, then the person after a year joining the field will start anew, and they will suffer substantial cut in salaries. Experienced personnel will have to switch jobs. If there is a sudden increase in number of projects, workers will have to work overtime. There will be more work injuries and accidents. There will be a decline in competitiveness. According to Mr. Alan Leung's amendment, the Pan-Democrats query the administration pushing through controversial infrastructural projects, and at the same time asking this council, and they ask this council to approve livelihood-related projects first. The alliance, the construction alliance, is a view that is confusing the truth. All infrastructures are related to people's livelihood. They are related to the long-term development of Hong Kong's economy. When works are being undertaken, there are jobs created, and after completion of the projects, there will be ensuing job opportunities created. Any delay in project will delay the supply of housing and the supply of traffic and transport infrastructure that will affect people's livelihood directly. As for more controversial projects versus less controversial projects, in fact, this will only lead to more controversies. There are different social impacts for small, medium, and large projects. An item which is thought to be controversial may not be very controversial, or vice versa. Say the NT Northeast development, it has been studied for over 10 years, and there has been wide consultation over the years. There has been no divided view. Yet last year, when the Finance Committee studied the funding for NT Northeast, there was a big controversy, and there was the storming of this council. Concerning the demand for human resource, there should be suitable allocation. There should be the increase in establishment of relevant professionals in the civil service. There should be enhancement of planning and supervision to respond to the demand of the trade and the concern of the public. I support Mr. Abraham Shek's motion. Mr. Martin Liao. Mr. President, the issue before us is the slow progress in vetting and approving funding applications for infrastructural projects. Because of the non-cooperative movements by some members, the operation of the council has ground to a halt. There is a big, serious backlog of funding approvals. The deadlock has adversely affected people's livelihood. It will delay important infrastructure projects and lead to escalating costs and slow economic development of society. The overall economy and overall development of society will face far-reaching negative impacts. The issue before us is a serious one. It is about a higher level issue of the constitutional responsibility of council. According to Article 73 of the Basic Law, the Legislative Council according to the Basic Law, has to amend and repeal and approve laws, and then approve budget, approve public expenditure, listen to the policy address of the CE and debate on that. Question the administration, the work of the executive. These are related to public interests. They are important constitutional powers. It is not a way to block the government or to sanction the government. Now it becomes a means of blackmailing the government in order to achieve their political ends. They have adopted various means to block the smooth operation of this council. They move trivial amendments and motions. They keep asking for a quorum count. They engage in long speeches in order to achieve their objectives. Some members say they do filibustering because the proposals made by the government are controversial. They have adopted an extraordinary means to supervise administration in using public money. Some also say that their questions are not for filibustering. They are exercising the basic rights of members in respect of asking questions and moving motions. Nobody has queried the exercise of their rights under the constitutional setup, but the arguments they put forward are deceptive. They cannot cheat the public. Some say overseas parliaments do have filibustering, but they do not do filibustering forever. And finally, they have to consider overall public interest and public opinion. In overseas countries, though they have filibustering, they also have mechanism to stop filibustering. I do not accept that just a few members doing filibustering can paralyze the council for discharging its duties. And the issues that are affected by filibustering are not controversial at all. However, your position is, and however well you exercise your rights in putting questions and moving motions, you are being swept over by huge numbers of motions and questions. Because of the lack of rational debates, people do not know the grounds of the issues or the other members, even if their worries and questions are justified, they will have been drowned by noise. The public only hear noise in this council without hearing any rational discussion, and the duty and responsibility of supervising or monitoring the government cannot be fulfilled. And people will not treat your demand appropriately, and that will not bring any good to this council or to the public. This will only bring society into a crisis. In the past 2 years, filibustering has only brought Hong Kong to a financial cliff. Last year's appropriation bill was only passed on the 4th of June. 3 weeks behind the deadline in May, and the temporary funding was not able to pay for government expenditure. And this council, or rather the administration, has suspended funding for hospitals and tertiary education institutions. They have to make use of their reserves, and the HA had considered selling its assets. This year's budget will soon be tabled. We are going to ask the public to worry over this again. Now, this kind of measure, this filibustering just harms everybody. We are just going into a dead end, and there is no way out, and that's not good for the people of Hong Kong. For the above reasons, I support Mr. Abraham Shek's original motion and Mr. Leung-sing's amendment. As for Mr. Alan Leung's amendment, it only criticizes the government. It's misleading. It misleads people into the belief that just rearranging the orders will solve the problem. I cannot accept that.
Mr. James Tian. Mr. President, I think both the business sector and the Liberal Party are concerned in recent years about the administration's governance over Hong Kong after Chi-wai Leung assumed office. As the other members put it, infrastructure projects are very important. People's livelihood is, of course, important. But if we don't have infrastructure projects, if we don't have hardware development, there will be limited room for our society's development. Let's look at the free trade zone in Shanghai and Tianhai in Shenzhen. Comparing to them, Hong Kong's development is stagnant. Well, for the business sector, if they don't find business opportunities, they would invest elsewhere. And ultimately, it's the engineers, construction workers that become unemployed. And worse than that, the economy will be impacted upon. And then, consequently, the government's financial position will also be affected due to delay in government's revenue. And in turn, this will affect people's income, people's prospects. And about Mr. Abraham Shek's motion today, it has to do with infrastructure projects. Dr. Wai-kwok already gave his speech. In 2011, the total commitment was 160 billion. In 2012-2013, it was $90 billion. Now it's just $36 billion. Only 13 out of the 30-odd projects have had really been passed, with a total commitment of $36 billion. So it's really worrisome that engineers may lose their jobs, and the labor sector may not like this idea. We need to ask this question: if all these projects go ahead, will there be sufficient construction workers? Well, let's look at the MTRCL projects. Project delays are largely due to insufficient construction workers. So we are really concerned about it. Now, this motion has to do with giving funding approval to infrastructure projects, but at the end of the day, it's all about politics. Now, members from the pro-establishment camp criticized Pandems for filibustering, causing delay in funding approval. On the contrary, Pandems criticized the government for disregarding them. Thereby, they started the uncooperative movement. Now, members from the pan-democratic camp are returned through direct election. Then they represent the people. Now, the situation is that the government and the Pandems don't even talk to each other, and the pro-establishment camp just sit and watch as the filibuster goes on. Well, years later, we may be retiring, and yet the economic development in Hong Kong cannot really catch up in just 1 or 2 years. So what about the prospects for our next generation? If the infrastructure projects don't go ahead, our young engineers will have no alternative but to work in the mainland, and we don't want to see that. Often we ask the chief executive to make a move, and then the Pandems should also make a move. Both should make compromises. Over the years, as we can see, there were items pushed through to the dissatisfaction of the Pandems, and sometimes views from the Pandems were not heeded. The lack of consensus and a lack of a dialogue had been the cause. If this goes on, members from the pro-establishment camp will just continue to sit and watch as their movement goes along. And what about the voters' wishes in the upcoming DC and electoral elections in 2016? I think the administration, both the administration and the Pan-Democrats, are responsible. Well, if projects cannot go ahead, the future will be affected, and the business sector is also concerned. For example, about the site in West Kowloon, it's still idling 17 years after reunification. What about Kai Tak? We only have the cruise terminal commissioned, and we also have a Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge underway, and the issue of car parks, and everything seems to have stayed put. And it will deal a huge blow to the development of Hong Kong in the long run. So we'd like to see government officials and their boss forge a better relationship with the Pan-Democrats. Mr. Christopher Chung. Since the beginning of the non-cooperative movement initiated by Pan-Dems, we have seen filibustering going on in LegCo, and funding approvals have been delayed. Our competitiveness heavily impacted upon, and even worse, tens of $billions public money have gone to waste. Therefore, I fully support Mr. Abraham Shek's motion today on the slow progress in approving funding applications for infrastructure projects. I hope members can face up to the issue, and I hope Pan-Dems can call the filibustering to a halt and change their minds. The LSD and the people power use some pretext to start a filibustering campaign and put forward 1,192 amendments, and the budget and the appropriation bill was not passed until the 4th of June 2013. Between February and December 2013, according to the Secretariat's records, there were 459 quorum calls, and about 70 hours of our valuable council time had gone to waste, causing $16 million of public money. Mr. President, the same filibustering campaign also happened in FC and PWSC meetings. For example, in the NENT and the funding application for advanced works for the NENT development, early May last year, the Pan-Dem started the filibustering campaign, and there were 7 meetings, and the item wasn't passed until midnight of the 26th of June. And some 33 items of FC were carried forward to this year. And the same happened in PWSC with some 20 items postponed to this year. Now, infrastructure projects have been delayed, and construction costs of tens of $billions have gone to waste. And in terms of Hong Kong's competitiveness, according to scholars, we are lagging behind. If the relationship between the executive and the legislature continues to deteriorate, our ranking in terms of competitiveness will continue to drop. Infrastructure projects include railway projects, schools, land supply, drainage system. Everything has to do with people's livelihood. However, in 2013-14, the FC only approved 13 items with a commitment of $3.6 billion, less than just 5% of the commitment made previous year. And I want to point out that, Mr. President, that with delays in infrastructure projects, development in the financial services sector will also be affected, because international investors are also concerned about the grooming of talents and the living environment. If we can't improve air quality or traffic congestion through implementation of these projects, if our property prices continue to soar as a result of project delays, we won't be able to attract talents and our competitiveness will be hampered. And the livelihood of workers and engineers will be affected. In the past, construction workers had held rallies objecting to the delays in approving funding applications for infrastructure projects. In fact, filibustering would also affect other related industries such as logistics, accounting, etc. And the losses incurred would be up to $7 billion a year to be borne by taxpayers. Members taking part in the filibustering campaign, unfortunately, object for the sake of objecting, and they are not fulfilling their duties as members of this council. On the one hand, they claim themselves to be representing the people of Hong Kong, and they strive for the interests of Hong Kong people. And in fact, they are thieves, calling out that thieves should be caught. And I appeal to members taking part in filibustering, if you continue to use this pretext to cause delays in this council, ultimately you have to bear the consequences. So please stop now for the benefit of our society.
Mr. Cheuk-yan. Well, the loyalists have been harping the same tune, rehashing the same points. Pan-Democrats, you filibuster, this non-cooperation movement is just the devil rebuking sin. You're opposing for the sake of it. But Pan-Democrats are actually doing the duty of a legislator, which is to monitor the government. If government projects are elephant projects that harm the public, of course we will object to it. But for the loyalists, as long as it's from the government, you're all for it. You never keep the gate for the people. You defend the administration. That's what you are. Let's open your eyes. Listen to what we say. Our non-cooperation movements are against white elephant projects that will not benefit livelihood of people. When it comes to projects that will benefit the livelihood of people, we of course would like it to be expedited. Let me give you a glaring example to show the tricks played by the administration. 689 loves fights. He loves executive hegemony. We want to talk to him about something. Mr. James Tien said, well, why don't you sit with the government to talk to them? We want to talk to the government to ask them to reshuffle the order of the projects. For those that we would like to be expedited, maybe just put it at the front of the queue. We object to those projects that are white elephant ones, because you talk about reclamation and you destroy the environment. Some people say that it's a waste of money. And now you say that, well, because of the delay, project cost has increased. But if the XRL is not to go ahead, you save $60 billion, which is a substantial sum. So I will go back to the point of executive hegemony. They love fights. They love these struggles. Chi-wai Leung loves it. Say, for example, one time we were fighting for the chairman of the PWSC. We said to Chi-wai Leung, and we wanted school projects to be expedited. And let me add that white elephant projects do not benefit workers. But smaller ones, say for example housing and schools, they are because it's labor intensive. So that's from the perspective of workers. So we would like schools and RCHEs, residential care homes for the elderly, should go first. He said no. But the chairman of the PWSC said that I want these school projects to come first, but the administration wants to fight. So they took away these school projects to prevent you from putting it first. And instead, for these white elephant projects, reclamation, Liantang, they remain on the list to block the way. There is nothing we can do. So we just try to just to stop these white elephant projects from going ahead. Well, I asked the public to judge who is right and who is wrong. There is another one that we're trying to stop. Well, that there is a queue in the FC, and the administration said that, well, we'll put everything else on hold. We want you to deal with the ITB first, the Information Innovation Technology Bureau first. But when in the debate of the government reorganization, we already vetoed it. And now they ask, that was made last year. In PWSC, we passed the Capital Works project. And now the ITB is in a way. Why don't you ask them to take away the ITB and let the Capital Works projects come first? Don't let the ITB get in the way. We approve projects that we think are worthy. Say, for example, school projects, we want it to be expedited. So look, open your eyes to see who are in the way of livelihood projects. Is the administration. So just don't point fingers. And I want to talk about workers, because people make it sound like they are having a hard time, and the real estate developers say form an alliance. I just talk about one thing. If there is such a big problem, why do you talk about import of foreign labor? You talk about, we have to lay off because there is insufficient work. But in the same breath, you said that, we have a manpower shortage in the construction work, in the construction sector. We need to import foreign labor. Tell me, which is right? When you talk about import of foreign labor, you talk about manpower shortage. But when you talk about the slow progress of approval of infrastructure projects, you said workers are on the brink of losing their jobs. And Kwok-hing paint himself as a defender for workers. How come Stanley Ng from the FTU, when asked about importation of foreign workers in the Labour Advisory Committee, when all Labour representatives object to it, Stanley Ng did not answer? Because he actually supports it. He represents the labor sector in the LAB. He supports importation of foreign labor. And at the same time, we're blamed for delaying these projects, resulting in the shortage of work for construction workers. But actually, what construction workers want is they want an even distribution of work. Well, when there's too much work, you want importation of foreign labor, and at other times they are starving. We want an even distribution, and that's exactly what we're doing, because we try to block these white elephant projects. We want the PRH projects and school projects to go ahead first. We stick to our guns. That is, we don't want white elephant projects. We want these livelihood projects. We would even out the workload, so there is no need for importation of labor. These loyalists are actually hypocrites, because they've been complaining that there is manpower shortage, and at the same time there is a shortage of work. Ms. Dari Lee. President, just now Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan asked people to look carefully that those who object are white elephant projects. is the ITB and Elephant project. The opposition ignore what the Hong Kong people need, and they object to the setting up of the ITB. They don't care about waste besieging the city. They object to the landfill extension and the incinerator, and they did not want the anti-northeast development, but they want housing. On these projects, what Hong Kong need, Mr. Abraham Shek moves this motion. There is actually a serious delay of the infrastructure projects. In 2012-13, there are altogether 39 new projects approved by the FC involving a total of $90 billion. However, a year later, that is 2013-14, the number of approved projects stood at 13, involving $3.6 billion, which is over 90% reduced than the previous year. The opposition staged a non-cooperation movement, and the minority resort to making use of the loopholes in the rules and regulations. Members of the public, when they watch television, they see a lot of adjournment debate, thereby resulting in a delay of these infrastructure projects. We already have a very slow implementation of these projects. Compared to other cities, they failed to catch up. They failed to catch up with the need of society. What's worse is that with numerous delay, project cost increases. People suffer, and they have to foot the bill for these people who filibuster. Say, for example, for the landfill extension and incinerator. That is the incinerator alone. There has been delay. A project cost increase in 2008 when it was first proposed in Shakuchao. It was about $4 billion. Later, it increased. 2011, 12, and 2014, every year there has been an increase, and increased to $11.4 billion and $14.9 billion and $19.2 billion. It increases exponentially. What's infuriating is not just the incinerator example. There are 27 projects last year that have been delayed in the PWSC and the FC. 6 of them, including the Organic Resources Center, Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, topside development, engineering studies. The project cost has increased by $1.3 billion. In PWSC, there are 21 items that were delayed in its approval, resulting in an increased cost of $1 billion. So in over a year alone, because of these delay in approval, it has dissipated $2.3 billion of public money. That is, per taxpayer, say, for example, 1.6, there are 1.6 million taxpayers in 2011. Everyone will have to pay $1,400. Taxpayers have to pay. They have to foot the bill for these people who filibustered. What's infuriating is that they have double standards. Say, Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan, well, for the administration, it's damn if you do, damn if you don't. When the administration proposes a solution, they criticize it, you nitpick, and you will delay formulation and implementation. Say, for example, when it comes to housing, there is a shortage of housing. There are more and more people waiting, and the waiting times longer and longer for PRH units. When the administration proposes to develop NT-Northeast to increase housing, they said that there is a collusion between the administration and developers to take land away from these small owners. They filibuster and filibuster some more. And there is a lack of mobility in Hong Kong. A lot of people said that, well, there is an uneven development of different industries. And when the administration wants to set up the ITB to diversify our industry, then they said they were worried and is an as white elephant project, and they filibuster, hoping that it will simply go away. It will be aborted. And these people who filibuster said that they're doing it to stop white elephant projects. They asked the administration to change the agenda and take away or put these controversial items at the end of the queue, and then they will not stop it. But what is controversial and what is not is very subjective. And in the same breath, what we see is that last year when the FC was dealing with the funding of $600 million of the Fisheries Development Fund to help fishermen affected by the trawl ban. This is a livelihood issue. What happened? They use the same reason to filibuster. Reason is very clear. This is hostage. This is a hostage, so that they can stop the ITB. They don't want the ITB set up by Chi-wai Leung because they want to fight. The opposition for political struggle ignore people's livelihood, and they don't care what item it is. They don't care whether innocent people are caught in it. That's what Hong Kong people see, and it saddens them. So is it the Let's Go or the filibuster council? PWSC, FC, ESC, we have more and more meetings added, and yet we failed to deal with all the agenda items. In the past year, the opposition has staged a non-cooperation movement, not just in a form of filibustering, but they also caused abortion of meetings. Your time's up.
Mr. Chen. Mr. President, the loyalists are smearing. In fact, they are mud-raking. They are mud-raking group. They are smearing group. Starry Lee is speaking nonsense. She is a loyalist. She belongs to the ruling party. They have 43 members. If 43 members of the pro-establishment are sitting here, then there won't be any meeting aborted. A quorum count. President. Mr. Abraham, please go on. Mr. President, with regard to public works projects, there's a need to rectify certain mistakes and fallacies. They say members do filibustering, causing delay. Look at the express rail. It proceeded with the speed of lightning. There was approval of funding now. There is cost overrun of more than $10 billion. You should kill yourself to repent your sins. Because of the speedy introduction of the projects, they have not done enough site inspection. They have not done enough preparations. The DAB said the project should go ahead as soon as possible. Now the DAB should foot the bill. The loyalists should foot the bill. They passed the approval quickly. I moved 30 amendments and motions, and other Democrats moved some other amendments. We had not done enough filibustering. Otherwise, we wouldn't have paid $10 billion more. What they say is all nonsense. The loyalists are just mud rakers, and they just throw dirt. The delays are caused by wrong estimates of the government. Look at the cruise terminal. Originally, the administration thought that they could ask the consortia to build the terminal and then gave them 50 years of franchise. Now, the loyalists supported that. I said that that wouldn't be successful. I pointed out that not a single consortium will invest so much in such a project. That's common sense. Where are the loyalists? They just throw dirt. They just do mud raking. Well, that's vulgar language. Now, he just used vulgar language. Now, let's look at the public works projects. The government made a wrong estimate concerning the cruise terminal. In 2005, it started study. In 2007, there was tendering. No one put in a reasonable bid. Finally, the administration footed the bill and then built the cruise terminal. And then in January 2009, the administration put up the site for tender. There's 3 landfills and incinerators. We passed 1 incinerator, and they still have to go to the CFA. Even if you get a tender, you still can't sign the contract. If you can foresee the legislative process, legal process, you put other projects in front of the incinerator, other projects would have been passed. That is because of the stubbornness of the government. The loyalists just ignore the facts. They just don't know about they just don't know the case will be brought before the CFA. The government just blindly goes ahead. As for the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, if you can recall that the original plan of the administration was to build it by BOT. There would be a consortium to build the bridge, and then it got the franchise and then charge, just like operating the tunnel. Then after a certain period of time, the government will take over the bridge. I did point out that when the case was put before the Finance Committee, I opposed that. I already pointed out that according to the traffic volume of the Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai Bridge, no consortium would bid for that. The loyalists supported the BOT proposal. No one supported my view. Finally, no consortium put in a bid. You have to wake up. You have to learn. You have to be humble. Christopher Chung shouldn't just say nonsense. He should learn. He should study. The council should monitor the government, monitor government expenditure. You have the responsibility. You are not a rubber stamp. The EXCO is a rubber stamp because they have the responsibility. They have the duty, but LegCo members are to monitor the government, monitor public expenditure. they just go through the motions. They just support government proposals. When there is a problem, they just blame the opposition. Look at the facts. Look at the delay of the big projects. The government is responsible, and the loyalists is responsible because they fail their duty of monitoring the government. They just allow the executive the free rein. In fact, the executive, the administration is given a free rein. They open many supernumerary posts. The AOs support each other in establishing new posts. The increase in supernumerary posts last year was 3 times or 4 times that of previous years, and public expenditure is more than $170 billion per year. That is far exceeding the capacity of Hong Kong. There aren't enough barbenders, there aren't enough construction workers, and yet they keep starting works. You know that there aren't enough doctors, and then you put all the patients in the A&E department and let them die. Now, there aren't enough workers, and if you keep awarding contracts, then there will be delays, there will be cost escalation, there will be rise in claims. That's common sense. The loyalists, you have to know that you shouldn't waste money. We should therefore be a good gatekeeper. We should discharge our duty of monitoring the government. Don't let the administration does whatever it wants. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Good relationship between the legislature and the executive is very important to governance. The relationship started to decline since reunification, and now is in the doldrums. The administration blames the Pan-Democrats for the bad relationship. They say that the opposition sabotaging proposals that are related to livelihood issues and delaying projects and leading to cost escalation. That's not true. The LegCo is responsible for monitoring the government. It's not a rubber stamp. It's not a hand-raising machine for approving government proposals. The launching of white elephant projects will only worsen the relationship between the executive and the legislature. The government keep launching large-scale infrastructure projects. They cost billions of dollars, affecting the long-term development of Hong Kong. Members are concerned about the scrutiny. They raise questions in this council. That's reasonable. That's their duty. The administration just want to make the LegCo an ATM machine. It doesn't explain the details of the projects. They say that asking more questions will only lead to cost overruns. They just put the blame on the Pan-Democrats and force us to support these white elephant projects. We can't accept that. Many questions are related to the urgency of such projects. One example is the Lian-tang Yun-wai crossing. Now, the cost was $10.2 billion in 2012. But when the paper put before us, it was increased to $24.9 billion, an increase of more than $8.7 billion. That is a serious cost overrun, which is 53.7% of the estimated cost. The increase in cost results from cost escalation, construction cost escalation, and also the geological condition and labor costs and the like. The administration said that the project has to be completed before 2018, otherwise that will have an indirect impact on the reputation of Hong Kong and Hong Kong's economy, and delay will only cause higher costs. That cause panic, and it also pull over the eyes of the public. They don't know whether there is any urgency of the project. The administration is hiding the facts. The government is just causing white terror and force the council to pass the funding approval. Lian-tang border, they say will have to be completed by 2018. That's because of the timetable set by the joint committee, that is which is operated in Shenzhen. And there is no strong argument for completing the works in 2018. There is no justification for increasing costs to achieve that. In fact, the usage rate is not too high. Let's see Shenzhen Bay West, Shenzhen Western Crossing. In 2003, according to Public Works paper, by 2011, traffic volume will be 46,100. But according to the CNS and Immigration Department, the actual flow is just 9,529. There was a shortfall of 36,517 vehicles. It was only 20% of the original estimate. With the migration of factories away from PRD, there is a serious doubt about the need for the border crossings. With the change of laws in the mainland and rise in labor costs in PRD, industries in Guangdong East are moving westward. Some of them are even moving to Southeast Asia. There is a big question whether the border crossing is still of any urgency. Speeding up the project will only increase the demand and thereby driving up costs because labor market is already very tight. If the administration is not able to explain the urgency of the project, then the council should not become an ATM machine. It should not become a rubber stamp. The Democratic Party is of the view that the administration should adjust the priority of its projects so that the projects will be launched according to the capacity of the construction industry so that costs will not be driven up artificially by the administration. The administration has to be responsible for the delay of the projects. There is a backlog of 20-odd items under in the PWSC that includes Liantong and also the artificial island. We propose to deal with livelihood issue first, but the administration refused. Some projects can be speeded up, but the administration refused to juggle the agenda items, and therefore that cannot be achieved. The projects that are not controversial, that are related to people's livelihood, are not given a higher priority. Chi-wai Leung says that livelihood issues are no small issues. But when it comes to rejuggling the agenda items, the administration can do whatever it likes, but the administration refuses to take away the roadblocks. It shows that the administration is just bullying this council and try to thrust things down our throat, and there is no chance of any peace.
Mr. Paul Chair, Mr. President, as the saying goes, we should avoid arguments if we could. So today's motion is about an appeal to the government to be more proactive in exploring solutions with this council. This is a neutral motion. However, quite a lot of members hijacked this platform and resorted to finger pointing. Mr. President, recently I watched a movie called Sniper, and in the beginning they gave an analogy that there are people who are always being bullied, and there are people who act like wolves, always bullying others, and there are also people who protect the disadvantaged and the weak. Now, Mr. President, in this council, we have two kinds of people here, and it's really questionable whether we should introduce the third kind of people. Now, when we talk about democratic politics or democracy, we can consider conciliatory politics. For a strong country such as the United States, without consensus, without compromises, the Obamacare just went through repeated political bickering, and no solution has been offered. What about the reality in Hong Kong? Hong Kong has been under the British colonial rule for over a century, and many members of the public are of the view that freedom is of utmost importance, and these are the core values in Hong Kong. They cannot be eradicated, and they would like the administration to follow the core values and the established way of Hong Kong in dealing with issues. This is the reality. Secondly, in this council, there are too many loopholes in the rules of procedures which have not been changed for years. Members, in the pretext of monitoring the government, deployed delaying tactics. Well, it's just like rinsing the rice. You may be rinsing it very thoroughly on the face of it, but in fact you could use, instead of using a sieve, you could wash each and every grain or rice one by one, and just like members who use the pretext of monitoring the government, they are actually delaying the whole process and delaying the administration's governance. We need conciliation. After the Occupy movement, there is a wide social divide in society which is unprecedented. Therefore, we should take the lead in making peace, and the administration should not, because of the political persona or political motive in adhering to hawkish policies, because this is a disregard to the political reality. It is equally unsuitable and inappropriate to govern Hong Kong in the mainland mold. We must rise above the horizon. Allow me to use this expression. We must rise above the horizon and look down to see the whole picture, so that Hong Kong people can have the greatest room, greatest freedom to enjoy the best interests in this gap. And the administration is the giant comparing to members of this council. It has the responsibility to seek conciliation, mutual understanding, and consensus. I think this is the spirit of Mr. Shek's motion, that the administration should join hands with us instead of constantly being in loggerheads with us and making mutual accusations. Mr. President, Chinese people always like to take the middle of the road approach. Chinese people like to be neutral. As for our society, whilst preserving the Chinese culture, we have over the years been instilled with ideas from Britain, and even in the case of a court, in a legal battle, we try our best to resort to a rational debate. with humor and wits instead of using vulgar language and abusive gestures. All these are entirely unsuitable for the long-standing good traditions of Hong Kong. Mr. President, I talked about the analogy about animals. Well, how about a dove? Let's not be a hawk. Let's be a dove so that we can look far, and be a seagull so that we can look farther ahead. Mr. Chen He-ken.